You can stay here.
Oh, good. We can sit. Okay, cool. That's fine.
You're not going to say much.
No, I am not.
All right. Apologize for the delay. We were over with the governor, and bill reform has been signed. All right. So with that, we're going to open the Senate Election Law Municipal Affairs Committee, and in lieu of one of the sponsors, I would ask Senator to introduce the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I introduce House Bill 86 FN, local, increasing the cost of services for civil forfeiture of unlicensed dogs to the rate of certified mail. Mr. Chair, the bill came out of the municipal and county government on an 18-0 vote. It was put on the consent calendar and amended. It was amended on the House floor on a voice vote.
Okay. With that, the only one that signed up, come on up, Brody.
Brody.
Brody? Oh, you're not speaking. All right. No. The clerks, I think, sent us an email that said they were having a meeting today, and they were going to submit all their testimony on any of these bills electronically. So, with that, is there anyone else that wants to testify on this bill? Come on forward. Did you sign the sheet over there? That's all right. We'll have him bring this one down to you and we'll get it all on one sheet. Thank you. Go.
I'm tad short, so I'm just gonna adjust it a little bit.
My name is Maura Ryan. It's my first time coming before your committee, so I wasn't prepared to speak in this, so I'll keep it very short. I did listen to the testimony on this bill in the House, and I think that it was extremely petty to put through this, as I see it as something that's a cost of doing business. And I think that the people who have their pets don't necessarily want to lose their pets, that they've fallen on hard times, and that this just adds insult to injury and adds to the cost that they couldn't pay, because if they had the money in the first place, they would have paid the $7 for the license. I just find that incredibly petty and inappropriate, because it's an increase for postage for someone who couldn't pay the license for their dog, which as at $7, they would have paid it if they had that funding. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one else, we will close the public hearing and we'll open the next public hearing in just a minute. Oh, there was 3 people who signed in offline, 2 opposed, 1 in support.
I get that sign sheet somewhere. Yep.
Okay, according to my watch, we are at 9:30. So we'll open the public hearing on House Bill 92. Go ahead, Representative.
Good morning, Senator Gray, the rest of the Senate Election Law and Municipal Affairs. My name is Representative Joe Alexander. I represent the town of Goffstown. I introduced this bill on behalf of one of my constituents who saw there was a perceived conflict when you have a decision made by the planning board and then you appeal it to the zoning board and you see the same faces. And that was something that my constituent ran into. That was an issue. And I can also see the concern with that. So I introduced that bill with that intent. Municipal and county government in the House made small amendments actually to clear up the language. So what you have in front of you is what I consider a pretty clear bill. First, if the member of the zoning board is also a member of the planning board, they must recuse themselves if they're voting on something that's being appealed to the zoning board. And then the second thing is the change that was made was on line 10 of the bill. When a member also serves on the zoning board of adjustment, the individual shall recuse himself or herself from voting in matters previously decided in a zoning board of adjustment. So I believe this bill is pretty straightforward. I think it is a reasonable thing to not have the same people serving on two boards that at times may have different decisions. So I think in the interest of the public has an interest in making sure that we have independence on both boards. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Questions from the senators? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative, for being here. My question was, why did you choose to have the individual recused from the planning board only on matters previously decided? And I'll just clarify my question because obviously zoning board can also serve as an appeals board for the planning board. So is the intent that the member participate only at the zoning board level?
If they participate at the planning board, this is a change that municipal and county made because I agree, like if that's your
Yeah.
position, I agree with
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
in the interest of what the committee decided to do, I'm okay with that too. But
Yeah.
if they participate on the planning board level, then they must recuse it if that case is being appealed to the zoning board.
To the zoning board. What do it matter?
I put in the bill that originally said you just can't serve on both boards,
Right.
which is kind of my position, but the committee moved a different route.
Further questions?
One follow-up, if I may. So
Absolutely.
the prime sponsor might be open to a slight tweak because I additionally have the question, this is limited to voting on matters previously decided by the zoning board of adjustment. So procedurally, there might be matters that are subsequently decided by the zoning board of adjustment, you know? So I just wanted to take your temperature on some potential technical tweaks.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
I trust you on housing, Senator.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm trying to understand what you're trying to do because if you're being a zoning board chair and having a planning board member on my zoning board. So I get the idea of if you're on the planning board and someone appeals a planning board decision to the zoning board and you voted on the planning board, you probably should be recused from voting in the zoning board as well on the appealing of that decision.
Yes.
But if the zoning board overturns it the way this is written and it goes back to the planning board, now that members also from any future votes would not be able to vote. Is that what you're attempting to do?
Well, what I was attempting to do was just not allow a member to serve on both boards.
Yeah.
But there were changes that were made. So if that's what you would like to do and change it back to that, I'm cool with that. But
Follow?
So again, I guess when I look at line 3, you achieve the first goal, right? Line 3, it says if you're on the planning board and you voted on the planning board for something that's being appealed in the zoning board, you have to recuse yourself. That makes absolute common sense. When I look at the second one, though, it talks about when a member also serves on the zoning board, the individual shall recuse him and herself from voting on matters previously decided by the zoning board. So again, you're in that situation where I appeal a planning board decision to the zoning board overrides it. Now it has to go back and the planning board has to correct it. But that member who didn't vote on the planning board is now subjected to not be able to vote on the planning board either, is the way I read this. Is that the way you read it as well?
it's the way I read it.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You were the only one that was signed up. Is there anyone else that wants to testify on 92? Seeing none, the people online, there was 2 in support and 1 opposed. And with that, we will close the public hearing. you want to, if you want to talk about either the first or second bill, we could go into executive session.
Will we go into executive session?
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We're in executive session. The first bill that we heard, I know that we did have the testimony about people who have a pet and are unable to come up with the money, but these services were always meant to be self-sustaining, in that the fees would pay for the requirements that were in law. Comments from you guys?
So again, I tend to agree with the premise of the bill, is that it was, if you own the dog and I got to send you a certified letter because you didn't register your dog, you probably should pay the cost of the certified letter.
Yeah,
Senator Long?
I feel the same way. You know, it's adding $1.95. You know, in Manchester, it really isn't a cost factor when people aren't registered. They just either forgot or, you know, didn't have time to go to the clerk's office. So this bill increases it by $1.95, which I think is fair to the municipality.
Any further discussion?
Only thing I say, Mr. Chair, by not doing this, and especially if the cost exceeds what was in the statute, then all you're doing is shifting the burden to every other taxpayer within the town.
Okay, seeing there's no other comments, do I have a motion?
Move to ought to pass.
Second.
We have a motion of ought to pass. Senator Lang, Senator Rochford. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Do I have a motion for consent?
Move consent.
Second.
I'm going to give her the second. You know,
All right. Sounds good.
It was pretty close. It was pretty close.
Had a lot of
Okay, all
coffee
those
this
in favor of consent say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. It will be on consent. Who wants to take it out?
On consent, I'll take it out.
Senator Lang wants to take that one out. Okay. The second bill, 92, sounds like we probably will have an amendment coming forward from the discussion I heard during the questioning. I too have some problems with the way it's written. Certainly state law right now limits the number of people who can serve on multiple boards. And, you know, that's a good thing, but, you know, when we get into some of these smaller communities, actually finding people that are willing to serve on those boards is also an issue. So to preclude them completely is not something that I would support. But, you know, they should, you know, if they have acted in an official capacity or something, you know, on this issue previously, on either the planning board or the zoning board, maybe they should recuse. But it sounded like Senator Perkins Cook and Senator Lang were the most two vocal. So I would ask you to get your heads together and see if you can come up with, you know, an amendment that would satisfy what's going on. And I'm sure the prime sponsor over there has an interest in this also.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if I'm speaking for Senator Perkins Cook, but for me, I strike everything from line 6 to line 13. It's stuff dealing with the planning board itself, and just say, if you're on the zoning board, you shouldn't vote against vote in the quasi judicial capacity if you were on the planning board and that's what you're appealing. I think
All right.
section 5 works great. I don't understand why we do number 2 and that whole planning board member piece. And I would strike that whole 6 through 13 lines and just leave the rest of the bill as it is.
Okay, I will take a look at it.
Okay.
Unless you want to do it right now.
That's up to you, Senator, whether, I mean, we still have another 6 minutes according to that, probably 5 according to
When a
my
member
phone.
also serves on the planning board, the individual shall recuse herself or himself from voting on matters previously decided by the planning board and quasi-judicial. You know, I'm inclined to agree because what I think the end result should be is that the member can participate in the planning board, which is a more regular meeting. When it's appealed, then the member has the ability to know that the planning board has taken action and recuse themselves. And then when the zoning board is acting in a permitting capacity, which happens in some towns, for variances, this language covers that. The individual shall recuse herself or himself from voting on matters previously decided by the planning board. I guess the one thing I think it doesn't cover is, you know, a circumstance where, for example, you might have to go to the zoning board for a use variance and go to the planning board for like a setback waiver. And so the, you know, they're kind of acting simultaneously. So I guess the only change I would make to what you said is, matters previously decided or pending before the planning board.
Well, I guess we're not ready to jump. I think that the only issue again is you would go to the zoning board if you weren't going to meet a setback you needed a variance from a zoning. You wouldn't go to the planning board. You go to the zoning board. They're the ones that apply waiver and guidance to setback requirements about all, septic, septic setbacks, boundary setbacks, waterfront setbacks, those kind of things. So the zoning board tends to deal with all of those. They don't issue you don't go to the planning board if you're like, hey, look, the town says I have to be 10 feet from the edge of my property, but I can only be 9.5 feet. And so you go to the zoning board and say, I want a waiver for that half a foot. You wouldn't even touch the planning board.
Well, it depends what you're calling it. Those could be variances in front of the zoning board, or they could be waivers in front of the planning board, depending on how they're set up. But you could, for example, also be pursuing a conditional use permit with the planning board, but need some kind of setback from the zoning board. I guess I'm just saying there are circumstances where you might need to be before the two boards. But yeah, let me just work on something in the spirit of what we discussed, and I can bring it back next week.
And again, in your deliberations, just remember that some of these towns, if I make somebody recuse themselves, I may be down to, 3-4 members instead of 5 or whatever. So,
Right. It is a better solution from preventing them from serving, though, because, I think it's also hard to find people.
And
you could put in words such, without objection of the person who's making the application that they, can serve or something. I'm just, some of those small communities, all right.
Okay.
so again, this
Senator Long, I think.
Senator
had
Long, I
something
think.
to say.
Yeah, that's somebody who recuses himself. Are they still considered a quorum?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Are they still considered a quorum if you're going to recuse yourself?
That's a good question.
'Cause that would be the only issue on the smaller towns if they have a quorum, and if I'm recusing and I don't have a quorum.
So the one thing I'd say about section 5 is it truly does say it's talking about matters that are appealed to the zoning board only, not everything. It's only matters appealed, right? It's shall recuse him herself when voting on matters previously decided by the planning board in a quasi-judicial capacity in which the member participated in the planning board. So again, it's only talking about what the planning board made a decision, and the zoning board is the appeal process. It's not talking about regular permitting process. Again, if there's a case where you have to go to both, you can still go to both. It's when you're appealing a planning board decision, or and technically it could be even be the land use decision. But if you're appealing a planning board decision, that's when the person, if he's a member of the planning board, must recuse themselves. It's not in all matters.
I agree. That's what it said.
Okay. So that one is on hold. Do I have a
All right.
motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
We have a motion to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. We're out of executive session. And let me just check my phone here. Oh, we're on time. So,
Let me text
We can-
Representative Moffett, find out where he is.
all right.
Second.
Okay. We will open the public hearing on House Bill 99 and ask Senator Lang to introduce the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I introduce House Bill 99 relative to the waiver of property tax for disabled veterans. This bill came out of the House Municipal and County Government Committee on a vote of 18-0 with an amendment. It was voted on the House floor. The amendment was adopted. It was a voice vote only.
All right. Going right down through the list, Ms. Ryan?
Again, my name is Maura Ryan, and first time here in this committee. Thank you for hearing my testimony. I am a veteran advocate and an educational advocate for the state of New Hampshire, and I'm writing to you regarding HB 99. I'd like to point out that Senator Pearl is a sponsor of the original HB 99 bill, which increased the optional disabled veteran tax credit to 100% of property tax exemption. This verbiage was passed last year in the House and the Senate, but a Chevron rule was added to it to require that the recipient hold an SAH grant, which is inappropriate as there are disabled veterans, 100% disabled veterans who would qualify for an SAH grant, but will never get it because the federal government only gives out 120 of such grants nationally. We are the only state to have this requirement, and it's grossly inappropriate. In addition, towns are given the ability to grant elderly citizens a 100% property tax exemption with the addition of the words "not less than." My suggestion is that this verbiage be added to this bill to give the choice to towns to give more to disabled veterans if they so choose under the auspices of local control, especially as the standard is already given to elderly town residents. My town recently had a warrant article submitted which asked if the town should grant 100% property tax exemption to 100% permanent and total disabled veterans. And this article passed overwhelmingly. 2,186 people voted in favor against 1,379 no votes. As the town has the ability to control who gets tax breaks, this should be acted upon, but it is not because of the verbiage of the current law. During the election primary, the number one thing that was requested was a better tax break for 100% permanent and total disabled veterans. These are veterans who cannot work. Inflation has hit this group particularly hard, and now that people who work at McDonald's get $20 an hour and make over $42K per year, it has become increasingly difficult, for this group to stay in their homes. It has been brought up on the House side that some did not want tax breaks to go to disabled veterans who may have other sources of income. My suggestion is that you use a means test, such as the one proposed by the Congressional Budget Office, which established a means test of $138K per household, which includes all household members. Since this means test has already been established by the CBO, it could be easily incorporated for use in this bill to distinguish between veterans who have other sources of income and those who do not. Passing a bill granting permanently and totally disabled veterans 100% tax exemption also does not have a large impact on the budget, as there are few veterans who even qualify. My town currently has 72 veterans who qualify. Larger towns run potentially about 50 to 80 households. The current 4K tax credit for all permanently, totally, and disabled veterans costs $284 to the town, which makes up 0.005 of the overall budget. Increasing this to 100% is still not going to have a significant impact on the budget, as there are not many who qualify. Many other states already have this in place as a benefit, including Massachusetts and Vermont, who are our neighbors, and the state of Maine offers a $6,000 break. In conclusion, I recommend the following. Amend this bill to its original wording, allowing 100% property tax exemption for permanently and totally disabled veterans. Give the towns the ability to decide for themselves under the auspices of local control as to whether or not they would like to extend the benefit to 100% permanently and totally disabled veterans by adding the verbiage not less than. Add means testing if so desired by using the household amount already established by the CBO. And I also wanted to point out that the optional veterans tax credit has not been updated in 7 years. And in that time period, there's been a tremendous amount of inflation and cost increases, particularly with basic staples like gas and food. And this is necessary to help veterans stay in their home. As a result, I request the bill be amended and passed to help those who have been injured and are incapable of working due to service in their country. Other states which also have the 100% property tax exemption are Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Texas, Virginia, West Virginia, Illinois, Hawaii, Louisiana, Nebraska, Maryland, Michigan, Iowa, Mississippi, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and South Carolina. Washington offers this with a means test of $40,000 per household, not including veterans benefits. Maine, again, offers $6,000, which is higher than what is proposed here. And California offers a reduction in assessed value, as does Alaska. As a result, I ask you to support this measure, but I ask you to grant more, as currently many disabled veterans are in jeopardy of losing their homes.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Moffett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am the original prime sponsor of this measure. I was asked to put this in last year on behalf of some folks in the veterans community. And as you just heard, originally this did call for a 100% tax credit for qualified permanently disabled veterans. So this went to the House Committee, and DRA, Department of Revenue Administration, flagged that aspect of it. They were concerned about the fact that 100% property tax credit varies from community to community. Some communities, in terms of DRA projecting the cost of this measure, they had problems with the 100% aspect of it, which was addressed in committee and amended in committee, and I understand that, and I'm okay with that because of the argument that DRA made. So the House Committee amended that to the $5,000 figure. So again, as you just heard, that was not the original intent. I will say, as the prime sponsor, I am okay with the amendment. It's enabling legislation. It does give the communities and municipalities the option, if they want to allow totally permanently disabled veterans a bigger tax credit. There are some issues in terms of what that means and impacts, which came up in the House Committee. In terms of definition of 100% disabled, there are some pieces of that some folks need to get an understanding of. But that's where I am on this. I hope that this committee will move it forward. It's enabling legislation, and I am okay with the way that the House Committee amended it.
Okay, have you seen the amendment put forward by Representative Pryor?
For the Senate, I have not seen the latest thing that may have come to your committee.
If you'd hand him that, just so that as we ask him any more questions that we have, that he can. Do the senators have any other questions? Okay, having been on this committee for a long time, I know how the $4,000 was, how we came up with that. We went to DRA and asked for, the normal statewide, and we said that we wanted to be in the middle, so that a person who had the average home here in New Hampshire would not have to pay any taxes. So raising it to $5,000 from the testimony I've heard is boosting that up to get back towards that middle. Would you like to comment on either of those two statements?
Again, Senator, I understand, as I said earlier, the concern that DRA had over the 100% figure in terms of projecting the cost that this may entail. So looking at the amendment here, which has it going to 5,000, I am fine with that. As a prime sponsor, I think it's an improvement. It helps veterans more, and it also is sensitive to the concerns DRA expressed. So I am fine with the amendment that you're looking at.
Okay, with that, is there any other questions? Senator Rochford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative. So the copy that you got there references RSA 7236A, certain disabled veterans, which is a different section of law. And I'm looking at that section, and that does have allowance for a tax credit. So I'm just wondering what the difference is between service-connected total disability and the disabilities that are laid out in 7236, which is 100% permanently and totally disabled under federal law, is a double amputee or upper lower extremity, or has blindness in both eyes. Is this a different? Are there different levels of when you look at
Sorry, you can't-
disabilities?
You've had your chance.
What's the difference between levels of disability, I guess?
Sure. I touched on this piece a little bit earlier in my testimony, that there are some aspects of what the definition of 100% versus permanent disability entails or involves. There's also another aspect that came up in the House hearing was the issue of certain grants that may be at risk in terms of if a veteran accepts some sort of a tax credit, would that impact certain grants that they receive? So that is something that your question is a good question, and I would need to do a little bit of homework to give you a good answer. I mentioned this right up front, that it's not terribly simple in terms of some of the definitions of what constitutes a permanent or 100% disability. I know Kevin Grady is here from SVAC, and he's dealt with all kinds of legislation over the years. Yeah, he's still here. So he may or may not want to speak. You may or may not want to have him speak, but he may be able to give you a little bit better definition historically on how the definition of 100% or totally permanently disabled has evolved.
If you'd like to scoot your chair up and testify, that's fine.
I know I'm drafting you, Mr. Grady, but you've been here probably more than any of us, so.
Once or twice, I think so. Just for the record, everybody, my name is Kevin Grady. I'm a 25-year veteran of our Air Force, and I'm a 28-year resident of the town of Hooksett, New Hampshire. Today, I'm here representing the State Veterans Advisory Committee. We're chartered by state RSA 115:A-8 to speak for the veteran community, and we look at bills that have veteran impact, and we take a position on them, and then I come and tell you what our position is. We did not take a position on this bill, and I'd like to just briefly tell you why we didn't. We are very, very cognizant of the fact that whenever a veteran gets any kind of a monetary anything, that money has to be made up by the rest of the citizens. And we're all taxpayers too. And we're very sensitive to that. And what we can't have is every time that we're up here, I've got my hand out looking for money for veterans. I need to be able to sometimes sit in the background and say, if you want to do this, it'd be great, but if you don't, you don't. The bill last year, the big problem that the administrators and town administrators had is it makes it very difficult for them to plan if you say 100%. And I realize that it's enabling legislation, but when you say 100%, it makes it difficult for them to budget appropriately because they don't know how much that would be. And consequently, the fear is, since this is enabling legislation, is that you won't see this on a warrant article because the town administrators decide it's too hard to do. We can't run the math and figure things out, and we'll have to come back and ask taxpayers for more money if we get this wrong. So that's why the dollar figure has been associated with all of this. We've also spent a lot of time over the past several years trying to get our arms around the definition of a veteran and put it all into RSA. It's all in RSA 2150. And what we'd like to do as we go through all of these bills that have veteran impact is when we're talking about a veteran, we reference 2150 so that the playing field is level. Finally, the way the State Veterans Advisory Committee feels about bills that give big tax breaks away is that we want to target that person that is really, truly needy of the money. We want to make sure that we've got the language exactly correct so that we don't have someone who, for example, has a 100% disability rating from the VA, but the way that they got that is they cobbled together 2 or 3 things that happened to them over a 20-year career, like high blood pressure, eyesight problems, hearing problems, and all of a sudden that person has a 100% disability rating with the VA, while at the same time they've got a 6-figure a year job. So if you wanted to do a means testing or something like that, what we're really trying to target with legislation like this is that veteran that really truly needs the help, or they're going to lose their home because they can't work. They're never ever going to be able to work again. And the costs of caring for that veteran keep going up, and we'd like to try and help them out. So hopefully, sir, that provided a little background on where we are on all of this. And there's a lot of times, I have to be honest with you, I come up to you and I have to tell you that we support the spirit and intent of something, but the nuts and bolts of how that gets done and the language that gets that done precisely the way we want it, we're not the experts in that. We can just tell you how we feel as a veteran community.
Just make sure that Mr. Grady has had a chance to look at that.
It's from Representative Power.
Okay.
Okay, additional questions from the senators? Senator Lang.
So thank you for taking my question. So again, I'm trying to look at all of the 72 chapter laws that have to deal with veterans tax credits, and there are quite a few of them in there.
Yes, sir.
But it looks like to me that if a town, there's a standard credit, it sounds like, that the town doesn't have to adopt. It gets a minimum amount of money.
Standard $50 credit.
Yeah, it's a $50 for all veterans, another different one for combat veterans, and then there's this one, that's a $700.
Is an optional one, yes.
And then there's an optional for everything over 701 that a town can choose to do. Is that a summary that?
I know that they were trying to raise the optional credit this time from 750 to 1,000, and I believe that bill was tabled in whichever, I can't remember whether it was a House bill or a Senate bill, but it was tabled for this.
That's the
session.
one for all veterans.
Yes, sir.
Right. So this one particularly talks about a credit for disabled veterans, but it sounds like, again, if a town chooses to adopt this and a veteran chooses to apply for it, all of those other credits go away. This is the only credit that would apply.
Yes, sir, that's correct. That's the way I understand it, yes.
Thank you.
And I know the senator from Littleton had asked about the designation or the criteria to be considered permanently, totally disabled or 100% disabled. And as I said before, I didn't give you a great answer for that. It's not as simple. There's different criteria and there's different categories of disability. And so I want to make sure that we get you the information that you asked for on that. I'm not sure if Mr. Grady can speak to that. Obviously, a veteran needs to show a DD 214 to confirm their veteran status to get any tax break, honorably discharged and all that. So to your question on what criteria involves 100% disabled and how do you show that, we need to get you a better answer on that. I'm not sure, Mr. Grady, if you can speak to that.
I can't speak to everything on that, but one aspect that I will clarify a little bit is the difference between a 100% disabled veteran and a 100% total and permanently disabled veteran. And when the VA gives the permanent rating to someone, it is the VA's assessment that this person is never going to work another day in their life. They're not going to be able to work another day in their life as a result of a service-connected disability.
Certainly.
So again, and correct me if I'm wrong, the way I read this, under section 1 of that chapter, 7235, they actually use the same standard, total and disabled, and that's the mandatory shall language. It's not an option for a town. It just says that this is what the state says is a credit. But when you get to 1A, which is the optional, the bill here that looks to raise it, it actually just says total disabled. It doesn't use the permanent word. That does in the same chapter of law just above it. I think this just puts it in alignment. Section 1 and Section 1A is the same.
Yeah. Again, I don't have the statute in front of me right now, but these are the kind of things that we're trying to fix before, in a perfect world, we probably should put together a team with some smart people that look at this whole thing for a little while and say, let's find all the places in the tax codes that call for veteran tax credits, and let's make sure that the language is common in all of those, and that when we have a bill like this, that we're trying to protect the most vulnerable of that cohort of disabled veterans, the folks that are permanently disabled and are never going to work again, that we make sure that that we sufficiently narrowed the language that this particular statute is only going to apply to that particular group of people.
There are populations that, in the veterans community, that will have a degree of disability, 10%, 50%, or whatever. This would not apply to them. Again, back to Senator Rofert's excellent question. The VA does have documentation that will say a percentage of disability. This would only apply to someone who is documented 100% permanently disabled. And there are a couple of pieces of that. Again, which I've mentioned twice already, in terms of what does that mean in terms of permanent or total. And the new language has permanent, and what will get you some very clear definition as to what that means. But bottom line, the VA will have official documentation that would say 100% disabled, and this would apply only to those with that 100% rating as opposed to anything less than that.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you. You get my copy, because that's the only copy of the prior amendment that I have, so. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, on the list, we still have Mr. Martin.
Good morning, I'm Dennis Martin. I'm from 182 Pillsbury Road, Londonderry, New Hampshire. I am a 100% disabled veteran. I'm a permanent, total, and unemployable. That means I can never work again. Just so that there's, I think, a little confusion between that. 100% permanent, total cannot work. 100% scheduling can work. There is a difference. So just so you understand that. Give you a little bit of a background. I served in the United States Coast Guard from 1979 to 1983. I was a rescue swimmer, and I was also attached to a special drug enforcement part of it, where I went to Central America on a few vacations. And I receive now that tax credit in my town of Londonderry, which is $4,000 a year. As Mara had stated, with the cost of inflation and so forth, and everything that goes up, that $4,000 is basically, gone, because our taxes keep going up every year in Londonderry, and it's caused by the driven of the housing, which is $600,000-$700,000 homes and $800,000 homes and $1 million homes, which I don't have, and all I know is I need this tax break to go up in order for me to be able to stay in the town of Londonderry. And in our town, like Mara had said earlier, has already voted it, basically passed it on a warrant article this past election. This room should be filled right now with 100% disabled veterans. Believe me, there are more out there than you know. I was also a homeless veteran. And back during the Gulf War, I knew what it was like not to have a home. I never knew where I was going to live. I was couch jumping, and I don't want that to happen. And having this tax relief will make it easier to live in my home. you know, so, and I don't know if anybody's ever, in this room's ever been homeless. It's not a fun thing to be, you know, and, you know, every year I do a blues festival. I put together an event in my hometown, Londonderry, where we raise money for homeless veterans. And if you want more information about that, I certainly can tell you after the hearing. But, you know, the requirements, by the way, double amputee are the requirements of a SAH grant. You know, I'll be honest with you, Mara gave me some notes so I could bring that up. You should let her speak on some of this stuff. I know she's already spoken, but you should let her. She has more insight than I do on all this, and so you should let her try to answer some of those questions. You know, this is how
You can come up, sit with him.
you want to come up here, Mara. Mara and I are big advocates for veterans, and my end is the homeless thing, where somewhere in the neighborhood about 250 homeless veterans here, just in this state alone, and so go ahead and say what you got to say now.
So I just wanted to say that the what you were referencing, and I believe it was 7236, the double amputee, those are all the requirements of this SAH grant, which is a grant through the Department of Veterans Affairs. As I said, only 120 of those are given nationally, and that's why it doesn't make sense. We're the only state that has that as a requirement, and so few are given out. The chances of someone in New Hampshire getting one are very small. So that's why it's not really appropriate for it to be a part of that. But I'm happy to answer any questions on the variations of disabled veteran also.
Anyone have any additional questions for Mr. Martin or Ms. Ryden?
How would you feel if we change it instead of a fixed dollar amount, a percentage of the property tax? To make it future-proof, so we don't have to keep visiting how much of a tax credit it is, but we could do 25% up to 100% of the property tax will be based on what the town votes.
I would be open to that, yes. But I would also like to add, I'd like to have the town to have the flexibility under local control if they choose to give more, to allow them to.
You can't give, Mr. Chairman, again, you can't give more than the property tax amount. So if we set it to a percentage and we said you can give up to 100, anywhere from 26% up to 100%.
Correct.
Of property tax relief.
Yes, I would agree.
And then that would deal with future-proofing the statute.
Yes. I think that's prudent, actually.
I'll save my comments for executive session. Anyone else have a question? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience change their mind and wants to testify? Seeing none, the number of people who signed up, online 6 support, 1 opposed, and there was 1 additional person that signed up here, supports but does not wish to testify. With that, we'll close the public hearing, and as soon as we're ready, we'll open the next one. We'll open the next hearing.
All right. Thank you. My name is Representative Ross Berry. I'm the chair of the House Election Law Committee, represent the towns of Goffstown and Ware. I'm also the prime sponsor on House Bill 261 relative to election audits. Hopefully this will be the world's shortest hearing. Currently, the state law requires that we do 10 audits of the top of the ticket for state rep races that request a recount. Currently, the law stipulates that that audit has to occur before the recount, and I want to shift it to after the recount, because what happens is both parties send all of their volunteers, who then and legal counsel, who then have to sit there for an hour and a half to 2 hours while an audit occurs, and then they get to conduct the recount. And they can't tell their volunteers and counsel to show up late because we're handling ballots. So it incurs a cost of volunteer time and obviously monetary time with counsel. So I believe this bill does have the support of the Secretary of State, and I'm hoping it's the world's smallest change that'll actually have a nice impact on our recount process.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. We do have Secretary of State's office, but she's not testifying. And Representative Say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Representative Alvin C. from Loudon, along with representing 7 other towns. The top of the ballot audits were actually a result of 2022 House Bill 1467. And that was an idea I had, but since I wasn't a rep, Representative Yakovovich actually submitted it on my behalf. And the original intent was just to take advantage of the fact that the ballots were already in the recount area, the boxes were open, the seals broken. And this would just be a convenience to be able to check some of the top of the ballot races, which normally do not have anybody ask for a recount on. The when I originally thought it up, I was thinking that it would probably be done concurrently, so that while they were counting ballots for a representative, they would also count that top of the ballot race. It could also be done afterwards, but the audit was definitely intended to be secondary to the recount process. The recount process was the primary reason for people to be there, for the ballots to be there. So it was just I just wanted to clarify that that's what the intent was on the original law.
All right.
I'll take any questions if there are any.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's the last person on the list. Is there anybody here that changed their mind and wants to testify? Not seeing any online. There were 3 in support, 1 opposed. And with that, we'll close the public hearing. I have a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
I have a motion to go into executive session. I'll second it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. We're in executive session. You can come get the sign-in sheet so that I don't abscond with it and Jessica come hunt me down. All right. I'd like to go backwards, so we'll, if we could discuss HB 261. I would move on to pass.
Second.
Senator Lang seconds. Any discussion?
Senator, wasn't it your bill that included some of these top of the ticket races in?
I couldn't tell you whether it was mine or a good idea from someone else that I copied or someone else's bill, but the sequence to me,
Yep.
I certainly understand the testimony that if I've got people there and they're dealing with those ballots, if I've resolved the state rep issue, then there may not be as many people who want to stay around for the recount of the next, or others who were interested in that recount would be, it would make it easier for them to get up access to ballots, etc. So I don't really have a problem with changing the order.
Okay, and then sometimes, isn't it the audits that essentially trigger a recount? So this could be, there occurs a recount, then there occurs an audit, and then potentially there could be another recount. But your point is there are sort of people that want to be focused on certain levels of races and they can be present in the room at those times.
And since this one is for those higher level races, you know, if you get the other one out of the way so that people can concentrate on that, you know, there are people who would not be there for the representative race at
Right.
all,
Yeah.
but would be there because for this one, we may be counting the governor's race, or we may be counting a presidential race or a
Yes.
Senate race.
Yep. Yep. So procedurally, we're not removing anything. We're just changing the timing. So, okay.
Yep.
I think that's fine.
All right, further discussion? The motion is ought to pass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Do I have a motion with consent? I will second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and I'll take it out. All right. The last bill we just heard, 99. I reserved comment on the percentage. The reason that we went to DRA to find out what the average tax bill was so that we didn't have to put in a different means test. And if I put in a percentage and someone is living in that, and I'm going to be $100 million home, okay, that if I give them 50% of their tax off, that's a whole lot different than if somebody's living in a $100,000 dwelling and I'm giving them 50% off. So it's those people who are living in the average home or less that we were looking at giving them, you know, so that they would not have a tax bill. Okay. But if I get into a home that was much more expensive or much more the assessment is much higher, that is why the last time we settled on a dollar figure. And that the way we came up with that dollar figure is going to DRA and saying, okay, tell us what it is so that we can pick a number. So whether you put $5,000 in there because in the real estate market, we've had these tremendous increases in prices. Well, you got to also remember that the tax rates in a lot of these communities came down so that you don't get the same inflation of the tax as you would have with the inflation of the value of the home. I think that the 5,000 is reasonable. I would not support the percentage for the reasons given, and get comments from the rest of you.
I know, that the amendment that you were given by Representative Power, are you considering including that in the amending this bill with that amendment?
The brief look that I've taken at it, when you get into 72 and saying that this is not in addition to many credits, on the face of it, I haven't compared the exact language, side by side. I don't have any problems with. And amend section 1(2) of this act shall apply to any municipality who has adopted and shall not require local amendment or readoption. That I find a little more difficult.
Okay.
But whether the bill goes through, with that or without that, that's up to us to make a recommendation to the entire Senate. So, further comments, Senator Lang.
So again, I'll support the bill that's written only because, again, it talks about the other chapters that these credits are not stackable.
Yeah.
That you take this one, you don't get any of the other ones. So I think it's a cleaner version of it. So make it clear that the other one has, it says it only references 36A, but not 28, 28B, 28C, which are the other combat-related veterans and, those kind of
Right.
veterans, so I'd support that. I only brought the percentage up again, because I know, again, personally, I know a friend of mine who was permanently disabled, who inherited a house on Lake Willis Farm from his parents. And obviously, you can think of what the tax rate is on that, but he has no income except his military disability income. He ain't gonna be able to keep that house with $4,000 tax credit on a $1.6 million home that he inherited from his folks. And it would force him out, as a permanent disabled. So I think there are circumstances to be made that would indicate that would warrant 100% regardless of what the value of the home is. But I also get the chairman's point. So I'll take a half a loaf of bread over a whole loaf over none anytime. So I'd be happy to support the bill as written.
Additional comments? All right. The bill as presented to us is what we are considering. I will move ought to pass.
And second,
And I don't intend to offer any amendments, even the prior amendment. So is there anyone else? Okay, the motion before us is ought to pass. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it.
move consent.
And we have a motion for consent.
Second.
Second. All those in favor of consent, say aye. Aye. All those opposed. And,
Okay.
okay,
I'm gonna stay. That's it.
I don't care.
well,
I'll take it.
I think I would, either myself, and I believe that you're also a veteran, Senator Lang.
No, I'm not.
Oh, then I'm gonna take it
All
out.
right, I am not a veteran. Yep.
Unless one of you are a veteran and wants to take it out.
I'm a Peace Corps alumni.
Oh, Peace Corps. alumni. Okay. The only other bill that we've got is the one that's on hold for possible amendment. Is there any other business to come before us in executive session? Seeing none. Do we have a motion to come out of executive session? I have a motion, and I'll second if nobody else did. You come out, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. We're out of executive session. Our business today being complete, we are adjourned.